Well, the fortnight-long COP27 climate summit begins on Sunday in Cairo. Joining me now live is Dr Nina Ridder with the University of New South Wales Centre for Excellence for Climate Extremes. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. How will this summit test the resolve of nations and their commitment to climate action?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And so these COP meetings are very important to remind everyone that they committed to specific targets and also have to stick to these targets. So the new president of the COP in Egypt actually said that he's going to make it a priority to remind everyone of their commitments and see that people are actually having plans to stick to these commitments.
We know that nations are currently dealing with the fallout from, for example, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, along with global inflation. So is it too much to expect that we can get quick action when it does come to climate issues?
We have to have quick actions. I don't think we have any other option here. So if we want to stay under 1.5 degrees warming from pre-industrial times, we have to really urgently reduce our emissions. So we can only further emit another 400 billion tons of carbon, and at the moment we're actually emitting a tenth of that each year. And this has to change, otherwise we have 10 years and then we use the whole carbon budget and we will see increases of global temperature of above 1.5 degrees. So even though there's other political issues going on, we should not forget about that this is actually a crisis that we're facing and we really have to take action now.
What is Australia's role, do you believe, in supporting its neighbours to achieve net zero emissions?
I think Australia can take a leading role here, first of all, by leading by example, but also by supporting developing nations in the area by delivering technology, expert knowledge, and suggestions on how they can implement the kind of targets or the kind of tools that Australia is using to actually reach its commitments.
I want to ask you about another matter. There's a report out today from Human Rights Watch about the risks and lacking emergency response that we saw in the floods in Lismore and northern New South Wales earlier this year. Are you surprised by these findings?
To be honest, I'm not that surprised. It's if you see at how Lismore evolved, it was very hard for emergency service to see how bad it actually would be. The amount of preparedness was also very low. I don't think a lot of people actually realized that they were living in a flood zone and how severe this flooding would be. This is also because we have seen very wet conditions over the past few years with the 3 La Niñas in a row. A lot of downpours and the soils were saturated. So the rain that came might have been not that extreme, but it had a very high impact because of the circumstances that it met at Lismore.
So what can be learned from that flooding event?
So first of all, we have to remember that a lot of times when we see extreme events like this, natural disasters, it's the most vulnerable people of our society that are affected. They don't have the means or the option to actually to evacuate, like the report found. And it's actually reflecting a lot what we already know from climate change. So we know that the most vulnerable countries, the most vulnerable societal marginal groups actually are the ones that will be most impacted by it because they don't have the financial means to actually prevent these disasters from impacting them. So we have to really go back to the drawing board, make sure that building standards are adjusted, especially looking into the compounding of these hazards, where we have different hazards acting together and then increasing the impact or the severity of the impact. So we really need to put a focus on the most vulnerable groups and rethink how we deal in these situations, planning for these kind of things, and taking what we've learned from Lismore into the future.
Nina Ridder, we have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.